I'm Josh from Illustria Lives, and welcome to another video. So I've been out of town for work for a week, and of course that's when the entire book decides to leak, and then the NDA drop out of nowhere, and the book gets revealed in full. So I'm just still kind of catching up on everything that was revealed or announced or is available to play now. I've read over the book once. I have some first thoughts on it. But I actually filmed a wish list video that I was planning on editing and uploading once I got back, thinking that the book wouldn't be out for another couple weeks or so. So I think it'd be a little interesting for me to edit some of that in here and go over what I was hoping for the book and then what we actually got. So the first few minutes here are going to be from 2 weeks ago before the book leaked. And then I'll get into my thoughts after having read the book and just my initial reaction upon reading it after that. Now let's get into the video. So what is on my wish list for this book? It looks like a long list, but there's a few things that kind of overlap with each other. Number one thing is 2 Wound Saurus. I have a whole video as to why they need that to be differentiated from skinks and why they need that thematically. I honestly have said several times that if Saurus don't have 2 wounds, there's no way to make them balanced, and I'm not going to be able to play Saurus for another 3 years. So I'm really hoping for 2 Wound Saurus. We definitely need more rend just to compete in the way with all the power creep and with the current save stacking in 3.0. I'm not too worried about that. All of the newer 3.0 books have had a really healthy amount of rend, so we should definitely get that. I'm really hoping we get some unique prayer options. We have 2 really iconic priests and a subfaction that buffs priests with the mystic terrain. Several other armies that have priests have gotten unique prayers. I think every army that has access to priests except Slaves to Darkness has unique prayers. So I'm hoping even if we just get 3, just get a couple cool old one themed prayers. More subfactions. Every book that's out there has either 4 or 6 subfactions, unless they're very distinct, like the new Slaanesh book with its 3 hyper specialized subfactions, or like Soulblight Gravelords with its very distinct subfactions that all have their own artifacts and command traits and everything. But since ours pretty much are likely to be just a single ability, like most of the new 3.0 tomes, I'm really hoping that we get 1 more for Starborn and 1 more for Coalesce to better match some of the other books, like the Chaos books that have had 3 Demon and 3 Mortal, as well as because if you are primarily a Starborn player or primarily a Coalesce player and you have that preferred play style, you really only have 2 subfactions to choose from, which really sucks a lot of the times, especially since there are 2 very distinct sections in our book, in the Flyers and in Kroxigor, that could have a subfaction easily built around them that currently don't have any good options. So I'm pretty sure we're going to get 2 extra subfactions anyway, just because the 4 is rarer now, and 4 when you're already split in half, it would be even weirder. Next thing, I think this one's almost a guarantee that it changes, even if I don't know what exactly it'll change to, but Scaly Skin needs to change. Top runners are ignoring the first point of rend or -1 to wound. Just something that is more widely applicable and doesn't result in your ability doing nothing if you're fighting Lumineth or Keraton Overlords, and basically winning you the game if you're fighting Gargants or Ogres. It's just a feel bad for your opponent. It's really inconsistent. It's really hard to balance around. It makes the army's effectiveness swing wildly based on what other books are in the meta. And it's just a really unhealthy ability to have, as widely applicable as it is in its current state. So I'm assuming that they will change that one. Next is having monsters be a bit scarier, especially the Carnosaur. The Carnosaur should be on par with, if maybe slightly worse than, the Frostlord on Stonehorn. Should be this big terrifying thing that you don't want to be anywhere near. Easily over 300 points. All of our monster heroes in particular should be scary. They're dinosaurs. They're bred by the gods. They're these ancient beings riding them. They shouldn't be like the cheap discount monster faction. So I'm hoping that these get some big glow ups and the point increases to go along with it. Next is for Ripperdactyls. Ripperdactyls were completely demolished in the last book. They caught like 4 nerfs from their previous version. They're one of my favorite models. I own like 9. I'm really hoping that Ripperdactyls get back to their glory, and I'm really hoping that the toad actually is a marker again and is not just a stupid buff token that doesn't need to be its own model. And then I'm really hoping we have some viable Saurus builds. There hasn't been a viable Saurus build, like Saurus-centric build for Seraphon or Lizardmen since like 7th edition Fantasy. So I'm really hoping that you can put 40 Saurus and some Saurus Cavalry, whatever those end up looking like, on the table, and have a good time with it, and have actually properly be able to run that as an army. Saurus are awesome. They're the thing that got me into Warhammer in the first place. I want to run a Saurus army. And then finally, this is the more general one. I'll go into this a bit more detail in a moment, but we should still have a buff stacking theme. We just don't need the Zinchian combo-rific nonsense buff stacking that we currently have, where you can put 9 buffs on one thing and go, and everything is skink keyworded, and some things are Seraphon keyworded, and Saurus are bad half the time just because they can't get access to the skink buff, the skink only buffs. I still want to have a lot of buffs. I still think that it's a core identity of the army, is being able to buff up a unit of Saurus or buff up a monster and send it in powered by Slann magic from Azir and the old ones. But I hope that there are a few less, they are more powerful, and they are all Seraphon keyword locked. A possible idea I had was having some kind of mechanic, like maybe expanding the Sacred Asterisms, where we have some really strong buffs, but they're mutually exclusive with each other. Like being able to apply those Sacred Asterism buffs to units more widely, but you have to pick which unit it's on a turn, something along those lines, where we can still be a buff-centric army without the crazy level of bookkeeping or just over-the-top power spikes that we can currently have in our current book. Alright, so just a brief history of where Seraphon's been as an army. Seraphon has always been kind of a Johnny Spike hybrid book, having some teleportation and movement tricks and a very deep pool for list building that Johnny likes, and then kind of more efficient units and raw buff power that Spike likes. It's kind of bounced along those axes over its history, with things like Croaknado and Salamander Spam being more spike heavy, the most efficient Thunder Lizard double with Celadon lists being pretty spiky, and then other periods such as 2019 where it was very much a Johnny book with very focus on teleportation. In general, Starborn has always leaned more Johnny, and Coalesced has always leaned more Spike. So moving forward, in my opinion, Seraphon should thematically be a buff-centric Spike book, not unlike the current Fireslayers book. It's never really been a toolbox army. It has good units, usually a little bit on the weaker side, but very powerful and reliable buffs, similar to the Fireslayers runes. Basically, we should have okay War Scrolls, but really good automatic buffs that can be applied to increase their durability or damage, or even movement speed, and have those be reliable, have those be efficient, so we can customize our army on the table as we need to, using basically Lizard Warriors buffed by Slann magic. That's how it should play, is decent fighters, but supercharged via magic and other types of buffs. It's never really been exactly in this position that I have circled on the chart. In particular, it's never really had quite enough Timmy in it for an army that is primarily dinosaurs. But anywhere in this circle, I would say, is pretty solid in our next book. So, for example, the Starseer buff that's recently been previewed, this is basically perfect for what I would hope for the overall design of the book. It's got some interesting tactical play where you can delay it for a bigger payoff, but later turns it'll be less impactful. It's very reliable, it's a very strong buff, it has no range. As long as this doesn't result in a ridiculous amount of buff stacking, it probably isn't a huge source of NPE for your opponent. If this is a indication of how the overall book is designed, we're moving very much on the right track. But yeah, basically, as you can see on the chart over on the side, I would kind of be hoping for this book to be hybrid, like halfway between either Lumineth or Tzeentch and Fire Slayers, like a little bit more magic and a little bit more tactical than Fire Slayers, but a little bit less techy and a little bit less combo piece based than Tzeentch or Lumineth. Just kind of right in that middle space there. All right, so listening back over to my wish list footage from a couple weeks ago, I was a little bit more optimistic than I should have been, I guess. There's some things that I thought were pretty much guaranteed that we didn't end up getting, some things that I thought needed to be changed for the health of the army, and they did some weird things, so let's talk about it. First off, the good. We got the 2 Unsoras. I said that it was my ride or die change. We got it. They're here. They're beefy. It actually looks like a solid war scroll. I'm honestly surprised they're still at 4-up armor. I was expecting them to be 2 Uns with a 5-up. And they're honestly almost a 3-up armor with their very easy to apply +1 save buff that they can get. So they're even tankier than I thought they'd be. And I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. They're also a lot more expensive than I thought they'd be, but they're definitely effective, and I can't really complain about that. We got more rend across the book. If we didn't, we'd probably be a really bad army in the current meta, so glad for that. There's a few sources of 2 rend. It's in a few weird places. I was not expecting the new Raptordon Hunters to have 2 rend, but we have 2 rend in several places, and that's definitely a good thing to see. Even a few ways to kick it up to 3 rend in the book. Ripperdactyls are back. Ripperdactyls are really good. They're a little outclassed by the new Raptordon Chargers, but that's honestly kind of expected when you have new models that fill the exact same niche as old models, with the Raptordon Hunters and Chargers respectively being effectively new Pterodon and Ripperdactyls. I mean, they're good. The Frog is a marker again. It is not a once per game ability that has no reason to have a model. I definitely see some viable Saurus builds in the book. Agrodons, a lot of people online I've seen are pretty down on them. I actually like 1 unit of 6 in the middle of the table, just absorbing charges. I think you can be really effective with that. I think you can be really effective with blocks of Saurus with an old blood on foot. The Carnosaurs look serviceable. There's good support for Saurus. Honestly, the best thing out of Saurus is going to be just bricks of Saurus Warriors with a Slun to give them +1 rend. That's going to do a lot of damage. There's definitely some Saurus builds in the book that will work, and that's definitely good to see. The surprising one on the good list is the Starborn Cosmic Power Point abilities, which I abbreviated incorrectly here. That's a really cool idea. I don't think it outclasses summoning, but having a different way for Starborn to use those points instead of just being for summoning is great. The abilities are really cool. I love the idea of just resurrecting a bunch of Saurus and like bricks in front of the Slun and Starborn and forming new ones to replenish losses out of lightning magic. That sounds great. They're really cool. The new Slun War Scroll in general I'm a huge fan of. It's a great utility caster. It doesn't have the problems that the old one did of being allied into random stuff for Comet's Call. I'm honestly really surprised they kept the board-wide unbinding. That was something I saw a lot of people complaining about. when they were fighting Seraphon, that just seemed unfair that they couldn't deploy 35 inches away and be able to cast magic. I'm not complaining that they did. I never thought that was that big of a deal, but I know that it was kind of a source of NP, so I'm surprised that it survived. And then the bad. We somehow didn't get 2 more subfactions. There's no subfaction for the Flyers, which feels very strange. I thought a Flyer subfaction for Starborn was a shoo-in after the new Sylvaneth book. It would also give them a niche over the Raptordons, where they'd have a dedicated subfaction with their battle line. No idea why we didn't get that. And then the very obvious Kroxigor subfaction to go with the new Kroxigor minis, we didn't get, and instead they just folded Kroxigor into Kotal's Claw, which is very strange to me because they synergize with Skinks, and Kotal's Claw is supposed to be the Saurus subfaction. So, like, I don't know what army they're envisioning there, where, like, it's mostly Saurus and then some Kroxigor, and then, like, a unit of Skinks randomly just to buff the Kroxigor that are now battle line. It just seems very strange instead of just doing a third Coalesce subfaction that makes Kroxigor battle line. The monsters did not get the glow up that I was hoping they were for. No mount traits anymore is very strange to me. At the very minimum, mount traits should be in Coalesced instead of the monsters' rampages. King Chief on Stegodon lost his place entirely. He has nowhere to really go. Engine of the Gods went from one of the best war scrolls in the game to probably the single worst war scroll in this book, which is very disappointing for anyone else like me that converted the crap out of theirs to make it look awesome because you were taking it in every game before. Scaly Skin / Coalesced / the new bite mechanic. I cannot believe they didn't change Scaly Skin. It seems like instead of changing Scaly Skin, they just decided to nerf everything else in Coalesced to compensate for when Scaly Skin is really good. But to me, that just makes everything in Coalesced kind of boring to play. Like, most of the artifacts and command traits, they're fine, but they're not as interesting as the Starborn ones. And then the new bite mechanic, which Coalesce buffs twice between its Allegiance ability and its Realm Shaper engine, only actually really affects 2 units in Saurus Warriors and Kroxigor. Saurus Guard, you're not really caring about their bite damage, and the foot characters, you're not really caring about their bite damage. I have no idea why Agrodon and Carnosaurs don't bite, and then at least they would synergize with it, and I'd be a little bit more okay with that. But having an entire Allegiance ability only for 2 units is very odd. The removal of all shooting builds. I know a lot of people that got into Seraphon for a dinosaur gun line, and that's what they were excited about. All of the shooting got nerfed, which it makes sense, but then all of the shooting support also got removed. There's no more Skink Priest giving +1 to hit in the shooting phase. There's no more double firing. This could have been really easily fixed by a single command trait or artifact, even just in the Coalesce side, that did anything to buff Bastiladons and Stegodons, just +1 attack for missile weapons on monsters. I mean, heck, even +1 attack for missile weapons, +1 to hit for missile weapons near the bearer, something similar to the trophy rack that ogres have. Just anything where you could actually build a shooting list, when this was, in the last book, primarily a shooting army. Like, all the Skink builds and all of the Thunder Lizard builds were shooting armies at their heart, and it was only Kotal's Claw builds and then, like, Mortal Wound spam builds that weren't primarily a shooting army. So it feels very strange to basically not have a shooting viable list anymore, and it's a primarily combat and magic army now. It feels like you're going to alienate a lot of old players of the army that got into it for the dinosaur gun line, and all it would have taken was a single artifact or command trait that would synergize with those pieces. I'm personally not a fan of auto-include units, and it seems like you're not playing Starborn without Croak, and you're not playing this army without an Astrolith Bearer. What that usually ends up meaning is that those things get nerfed in points, but they're still effectively required for the army to function, so the whole army just gets nerfed. If the Astrolith Bearer goes up to 200 points because it's in every single list, the army will still take an Astrolith Bearer, it will just have 60 less points to play with. And that's just never a good situation to be in, and you get bored taking the same thing in every single list. So that's kind of disappointing to see how many just obvious auto-includes there are. And then similarly, the summoning in the current rule set is absolutely insane. You can summon over 1,000 points of models in a game without even really trying that hard. There's really easy ways to abuse it with endless spells. It's just really obviously and something that needs to get fixed. But if we look at what they recently did with Tzeentch, where Guild of Summoners was breaking tournaments open, they didn't change how Guild of Summoners summoning worked. They just nerfed the point cost of everything that generated summoning points, which of course hurts the Guild of Summoners build, but also hurts every single other Tzeentch list in existence, even the ones that were completely fine and weren't dominating tournaments. So I'm very concerned that our summoning is so good, especially in a series of books where they've been reducing summoning. The Khorne book has almost no summoning, because you're usually using the Blood Tithe for abilities. The Slaanesh book has almost no summoning because you're saving it to keep your abilities active. They removed summoning from Beasts of Chaos. And then they increased our summoning like triple or quadruple to what it was in the old book. I was honestly expecting a reduction. So I'm very worried that they're going to immediately start nerfing points on all of our casters to be able to make us generate less cosmic power points, which then will, of course, nerf all the Coalesce builds that use those casters without being able to summon anything. So that's just not a great state to be in for me. And then finally, we have a few things I'm just a little confused as to why these changed. So first we have the lack of buffs. I think they did it a little bit when they were trying to reduce the amount of buff stacking that we had. I like the buffs we do have. I just feel like there should be, like, we're missing like one, like I said, like a good shooting buff or some kind of aura buff for a melee support character, or just something else that could be stacked up, something for the monsters maybe. It feels a little lacking at the moment, because you pretty much have the 5-up ward, the Star Priest buff, the Astrolith Bearers thing, and then like one good buff spell in Coalesced, and I think there's one in Starborn, and that's about it. Like the old bloods are just using a lot of attack and a better version of like twice, and then a better version of a lot of attack. Like one good like +1 to hit aura that affected shooting as well would be great. Just one is just a little low for me. The removal of priests was very strange to me, and then the higher focus on wizards. So it's fine. It's just a little surprising and strange. Removing the sacred asterisms entirely as a mechanic really kind of sucks. I was expecting them to expand it. It was a really cool mechanic. It was a really good, just generic allegiance ability that both factions got access to. I feel like they just removed it because of the +1 to cast one that was kind of abusable, but they could have just removed that one and come up with some extra options. This would also fix my little issue with the lack of buffs if we still had a sacred asterisms mechanic floating around. So that's just a little disappointing. Splitting the spell lores is a very strange one to me. In particular, having Drain Magic be the spell that's on both Slann spell lores instead of Comet's Call, the iconic Slann spell, is just kind of another point against Coalesced for me. Drain Magic is fine in its new version, but you remove the iconic Slann spell and make it a lore spell instead of a War Scroll spell. You should be able to always take it on a Slann and not be missing it in Coalesced. So, and I'm not really sure why they split the spell lores in the first place. And then finally, the fact that the iconic Thunder Lizard General in a Skink Chief on Stegadon has no ability to take book command traits or artifacts in Coalesce, because they made all the artifacts either Slann and Skink only for Starborn or Slann and Saurus only for Coalesce, partially because of the way they split everything, is just really weird to me. I, again, don't really know why they split all of that stuff. They could have just had a list of Slann artifacts, a list of, like, with a couple Starborn and Coalesced required ones, and then the 3 Skink artifacts and 3 Saurus artifacts. They didn't need to split those. I feel like they just did, partially to keep the power for Coalesce locked into Scaly Skin instead of in artifact or command trait options. But yeah, currently if you want to make a skink chief on Stegodon your general, like you probably have been for a decent chunk of time in Thunder Lizard, you've got to take generic command traits and generic artifacts because you don't have any book options, which is just very, very weird. Alright, so in conclusion, as much as I probably sound like I'm kind of down on this book, I do think it's a fine book. It's probably going to be really strong. There's some really great combos in here. I really like, honestly, a lot of Starborn stuff. I just don't have as much to talk about with that because I'm a Coalesced main at heart, and I'm disappointed by the Coalesced side of the book. But I'm going to be having some videos out soon with a lot of different combos and builds and reviews of particular war scrolls, and I overall think this is going to be a really strong book, at least until the Croak Chocolate combo gets nerfed. 2 Moonsaurus was my single wish from the book. We did get that, so that is definitely cause for celebration. They're finally where they should have been 3 books ago, honestly. I'm so very, very excited about that. Like I said, very excited for Starborn and kind of bummed about Coalesced, which sucks because I've told several friends that I will never play Starborn and I will only ever play Coalesced because that is real Lizardmen to me, is Saurus and monsters buffed by Salon magic. But you can almost do that thematically better in Starborn now because you just have access to so many more magical abilities. So I guess this book made a liar of me and I'm going to play Starborn. Overall, I think that this is a good step in the right direction. I'm really hopeful for our next book because this one I think had a lot of missed opportunities that they hopefully do right next time around. But it is definitely an improvement over our current rules, if only for the complexity factor. Alright, so yeah, that was a little bit of a time travel into the past wish list, and then what we actually ended up getting out of the book. I hope you enjoy this. Let me know if you disagree. Let me know if you're super excited for Coalesced and think the Coalesced rules are really interesting, or that they were right to keep Scaly Skin the same. I would love to hear all of your thoughts in the comments below. But other than that, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.